Good evening, everybody. Good afternoon. Thank you to be here today. I'm Hilde Capparella. I'm a PhD student in religious studies at the Open University. And today I'm going to present the history and development of Afro-Caribbean religions and culture in three different islands, such as Cuba, Haiti, and Jamaica. This session will break into 45 minutes presentation followed by 50 minutes QA. I'm asking to all of you, if you don't understand any particular word I'm going to say or any particular term, to write it down and ask me at the end of the presentation. I hope with this presentation to decolonize the negative meta-narrative that surround for many centuries Afro-Caribbean religions, and I hope that I will be able that Afro-Caribbean religions are actually the outcome of form of resistance and accommodation to a contest, to European contest on the other side of the Atlantic that was quite violent and awful, like the contest of slavery and plantation societies. Unfortunately, as you can see from this slide, the slave trade began with the Afro-Caribbean religions develop the inception of Caribbean religions is lie on the slave trade. Millions of Africans were taken enslaved on the other side of the Atlantic. Millions of them lost their life during the passage, and the one that didn't lose their life, unfortunately, they lost their life, name, identity as African forever. I want really you keep this in your mind while I'm talking about Afro-Caribbean religions, because they born and grow in a contest, they develop in a contest very violent and very sad, actually an inhuman contest. The slave trade was a triangular trade that was going from Europe to Africa and to the Caribbean and back. Europe was actually the slave trade started with the Portuguese in the 1526. It was joined by the majority of European countries. They were taking goods from Europe to Africa in exchange of slave. Of course, we cannot forget that is important that with the European taking people on the other side, there was even the complicity of local leaders, local African leaders, because of course they wanted to keep their political religious hegemony in Africa, and that was a way to get rid of their enemy or whoever could somehow interfere in their political and religious power in Africa. As we can see from this slide, those African deported in the Caribbean belong to different ethnic groups. They spoke different languages, embrace different practices, not only regarding Afro-traditional religions, but at the time of the slave trade, some of them embrace also Christianity and Islam. Actually, they were the favorite to be sent over in the Caribbean because, of course, they were the one that they were the one that were compromising more the local political authority of African leaders. So, as we can see from this slide, this is the embarkation of very different ethnicities that were sent to the Caribbean. And when we think of them, we have to think of them not only as people deported in another place, but was not only a translocation of people, but was only even a translocation of beliefs, objects, and and practices, sorry, in the New World. So the influence, as we can see from this map, different tribes were displaced in different islands, and it's important to keep in mind that different islands had different European hegemony, political and religious. So they found in their arrival in the Caribbean a different context in different islands. Today we are going to talk about Catholic islands such as Cuba and Haiti, and Anglican Protestant island as Jamaica. Of course, there is the development in the Caribbean of many other religions. Let's say that Santeria in Cuba, the Voodoo in Haiti, and Rastafari in Jamaica are the main at the moment, are the ones that are predominant among all other Caribbean religions. So, Caribbean traditional religions, once arrived in the Caribbean, the slaves, anyway, despite they were, as we see in the previous slide, from different tribes, they were speaking different language, they were full of different practices. Anyway, they have something in common. They share some similar beliefs and practices. Among them, there is the notion of communityism. Communities correspond to a community of deities, or invisible beings, ancestors that live between the material world and the invisible world. They can be called with offers, they can be called with drumming, with possession, with divination, for divination. Another concept that is very important within, embraced by all African traditional religions, is the concept of Asse. Asse, that is called even Axe, depends where it localized, is a mystical power, the divine power that is in everything. Is in me, is in you, is in an object, they believe is even in words. That is very important, especially when we are going to talk about Rastafari. So, as we said, the development of in this slide, we can see the advent of different Caribbean religions in different islands. This development was the result of the clash, mixing and blending of African and European religion, cultures, language, and traditions. So, as we said before, the development in different islands depended on the context that they found once they arrived, when the slaves arrive in the islands. In the Catholic islands, one thing that is very important to underline, they were constricted immediately to convert to Catholicism. So, what's happened? The Catholicism in this island was already very strong, and we can forget that in this time in Europe there is the revival of the cult of saints that was very strong during the Crusade. The cult of saints is based on a cosmology of deities like the Yoruba or the Dahomey pantheon. So for them it was very easy for the slave to adjust their own beliefs and practices with the Catholic saints. Very similar, they have very similar practices, like the saint need to be, they work as a mediator between gods and the believer, or the saint, like the deities of the Yoruba and Dahomey pantheon, they need offer to respond to the questioning or needs of the practitioner. In adapting and mixing with Catholicism, African traditional religions relocate, were recreated, so they develop as their own form of, like a new form of religion in their own rights. Now we will see the process of changing from Afro-traditional religions to Caribbean religions. So when as we saw from previous map, actually I will go back to show you. Yeah, in Cuba, we have the presence of Yoruba, Congo, Dahomey, and Bantu. But among them, the one that actually were stronger, maybe their presence was more, was the Yoruba pantheon. When we have to understand that Yoruba, the Yoruba religion is based believes in let's go back here. Yeah, despite the Yoruba religion that actually is a religion of the actual Nigeria, but I think is expanded even in Benin, in all that area. Anyway, this religion, this African traditional religion in Africa, change from town to town, like get different, like maybe they follow different Orisha, so they offer different things to the Orisha. But one very important thing, they all believe in the Orisha, that these are their deities, they have a particular characteristic. There is the Orisha that protect you from I don't know, they can protect you from the negative, other negative people. There are the Orisha that are for healing. There are the Orisha that are called for love. They all believe in a supreme being, in the ancestor, in a form of divination that is called Ifa. Of course, within the Yoruba practice, there are only two ways to reach the divinity. One is possession, and the another one is offering of earth. So, however, in Cuba, this religion, once localized in Cuba, changed because they were constricted to adapt their religion, their culture to Catholicism. It changed to the point that the Yoruba divinities, they assume the form of local, of a Roman Catholic saint, sorry. So in mixing and adapting to the cosmology of the Catholic saints, Santeria was developed. The Orisha, as we said before, as the Catholic saint, needs to be fed with offering food, drinks, or object. And it's very important to understand that in Cuba, when the slaves arrived, they were taken in, they were organized by the Catholic Church in cabildos. These cabildos were working as a sort of confraternities among the enslaved. And these cabildos, despite they were controlled by the Catholic Church, but they were helping anyway this ethnic group to keep their language, tradition, and religion partially alive. One important thing of this picture that I would like you to notice that these two figures here, one looks like the Madonna, and the other San Lazzaro. Actually, they represent the Madonna and San Lazzaro. This picture was taken by me in Cuba during an holiday field work, but they are not the Madonna or San Lazzaro. Actually, they are Yemaya and sorry, I can't find the name. Yes. In Santeria, San Lazzaro is called Babalu Aye. Now, what is very interesting, the San Lazzaro, that in Cuba is called, is both is San Lazzaro is Babalu Aye. In Nigeria, in the Yoruba tradition, is called Sapona. In Congo, in the Fon tradition, is called Sakpata. In Congo, in Gabon, among the Eve, is called Anigbata. So what is very important is not his identity, his name change. Actually, his name change, but his identity as a healer doesn't change, because this saint within the Catholic Church is a saint of the for the people call for when they are sick. So he's the healer, and the same is is in the Yoruba pantheon. So it's very interesting the synchronicity that they helped actually the slave once they arrive in the Caribbean not in the Caribbean, Cuba in particular, to still practices. They were able to still practice it, even in a secret way, their own religion. The main ritual within Santeria is the Haifa divination, because within Santeria any decision can be taken by the diviner, by the practitioner without the consent of the Orisha. So sometimes the community possession is used, in fact, within the Santeria community, to have to know what the Orisha think about a specific matter or about the community in itself. A drumming is essential and is part of any Afro-Caribbean religions, even at the moment, because it's believed that when the drum sound, the Orisha are invited to come and join the community. It's significant in this picture. As you can see, there is a woman dressed in white. She is doing a painting, a symbol on the floor. That is called veve within Santeria. It is a symbol that is used in order to open the door with the invisible world. To let the Orisha coming over. This symbol in particular actually is always this symbol that get draw in order to call the one that opened the door, which is St. Peter for Catholics, because it's the one that got the key of the paradise, and that is Ogun within Santeria. As we will see, it is called Papa Legba within Haiti in Voodoo. So it's the essence of the deities more than the name that is important and make us understand the similarity between Catholicism, cult of saint, and the development of Santeria in Cuba. So now we go through we pass through the French islands, and similar to the Cuban islands, because they were Catholic islands anyway, they once arrived in Haiti, the slaves were converted to Catholicism. Actually, in Haiti, this was even stronger because they didn't have cabildos, and because they had actually the French Code Noir. According to this code, the slaves, they needed to convert to Catholicism within 8 days to their arrival in Haiti. Differently from the Santeria, the Catholic saints, they start to be amalgamating and mixed with the Dahomey pantheon of deities, which they are called Loans, no Orisha, but Loans. This is because even in Haiti, at the time of disembarkation, were arrived enslaved from different tribes of Africa with different languages and cultures. But probably because it was the most dominant presence, probably because they had a more flexible pantheon, that the Dahomey religion became dominant comparing to other religion, is the one that actually synchronized with Catholicism, with the cult of saints. So, as we can see from this picture, the syncretism between Voodoo and Catholicism was mainly on syncretism of material and magic. In fact, as we can see from this picture, there are objects, paintings, gesture, and holy water, candles, all these things were appropriated by the Dahomey people, and they were taken and conceived as to possess magical power. So very important actually is that no, I want to go back one moment behind because I cannot see properly the PowerPoint. I forgot to explain you about Rada and Pedro Voodoo, because Voodoo developed in two ways in Haiti. One, in accommodating the Dahomey culture and religion to the saint, to Catholicism. So this is called the Rada Voodoo. While there is the development also the Pedro Voodoo that was based, was developing actually among the Maroons in the hinterland of Haiti. The Maroons, if you don't know, they were running slaves. They often were living in the hills of these islands. They were often the one that started the slave revolt against the European hegemony. This future, these characters, these leaders, they were both spiritual and political leaders among the enslaved. They were, how we will see, they were pivotal to slave revolt and revolution. I want to read you a pass of Metro. In his book Voodoo in Haiti, he described how on the night of the 14th of August 1791, an enslaved African, Jamaican-born voodoo priest named Bookman prepared a major voodoo ceremony. We had to know that Bookman, before to be in Haiti, was born in Jamaica, but he traveled. He was able to travel to Dahomey, to Africa. Actually, the legends say that the high priest of voodoo in Dahomey, they told him he must to liberate Haiti. So he prepared this major voodoo ceremony, and during the ceremony he entered into a state of possession trance and told the slave community that the spirit of voodoo wanted their support in liberating the enslaved and expelling the French from the entire island. So as we can see, spiritual leaders were very important and fundamental to the slave revolt and to their success. In fact, we can forget the voodoo has forged the history and culture of Haiti, especially in the light of the Maroons and voodoo collaboration, which was essential to the Haitian Revolution, and through which Haiti became the first Black Republic in 1804. This is as well why Haiti has such a negative narrative on top, because they defeated the European political religion hegemony already in the 19th, the beginning of the 19th century, where all the other Caribbean islands, they were still in under the hegemony of Europe and in a state of slavery for the African slave. What is very important as well is to know that today Santeria and Voodoo are not practices only in Cuba and Haiti, but they are practices in America because people migrate there. Actually it's very interesting because many practitioners now had the opportunity to go back to Africa, so to discover again the real roots of their religion that changed so much in the Caribbean. And it's very interesting as well, but this needs further studies, the development of this religion within social networks. So now we will see how actually Afro-Caribbean religion developed in a context of Anglicanism or in a context of the British Islands. I will take as example Jamaica because it's impossible in 45 minutes explain to you all the different religion in the different islands. So in Jamaica, as in every British islands, actually the slave, they were not forced to conversion to Christianity. At least until the beginning of the 19th century. So we can assist to the development of different religions such as Mayal, Obeah, and Kumina. They are all Afro-Caribbean creations, and despite they have their roots in the Yoruba, Ashanti, and Congo religion. They have developed from a unification of many different African beliefs and practices and languages. As we said, as I just said, Christianity was not imposed. The conversion of African to Protestantism, when they started to be obliged to convert to Protestantism, led to the formation of new type of Afro-Caribbean movement, such as the Native Baptist, Revival Zion, and the 21st century Rastafarianism. This one because when they converted, actually they were not considered by the English Christians, so they were obliged to develop their own way of Christianity, their own form of Christianity, separate by the English or British Christians, and they mix it, the Christianity with Maya, Obeah, Kumina, and that's how we have the development of new type of Afro-Christian movement in Jamaica. Atlantic religion and identity are in constant process of mixing and reshaping themselves. We can see that this happened even in the 20th century with the advent of Rastafari. So the Marcus Garvey, first I want to underline that I don't call Rastafarianism in respect to the people that follow Rastafari, because they believe that any ism or ian in any word, this go back to the concept of Ashe, that the divinity is in everything, even in words, is a form of oppressive tools from Babylon, from the system. So because they believe that even the language is an oppressive tools used by the European, the Western hegemonic system to downpress African diasporic Caribbean people or American people. Marcus Garvey is considered by many the founder of Rastafari because he prophesied the coming of the Black Redeemer. He actually dedicated his whole life to Black emancipation. He founded the Union, the UNIA, the Universal Negro Improvement Association, and he was the one to seek for repatriation to Africa. He wanted all the people deported to America and to the Caribbean. They had the opportunity, if they wanted, to go back to Africa. In the meantime, when he was living in America for a long time, despite he was Jamaican, when he got back to Jamaica in the 1927, he started to prophesy the coming of a Black Messiah. And when in the 1930, King Selassie of Ethiopia was crowned King of Kings, the Lion of Judah, this sounded to many Jamaicans as the fulfillment of a prophecy. Plus, they found they found confirmation of this within the Bible. You can go to check in Revelation 5.2 or 1990 of the book of Revelation. Why they found King Selassie in the Bible? First of all, because King Selassie looks like to be the 265 descendant of the David the Solomon throne. And secondly, was crowned as King of Kings, the Lion of Judah. The one that in the Bible actually is the one that opened the seventh seal and is the Christ coming back. But the crowning of King Selassie was even a huge event for Jamaican people because he replaced both the white God and the white British king with a more African version, a Coptic version of a black king that finally was crowned, especially in this time, because when King Selassie was crowned, we can forget that Africa was under colonialism. Ethiopia was the only country that wasn't colonized, apart for 5 years Italian, unfortunately, colonized and Ethiopia. And so for Jamaica, for many Jamaica, they saw in King Selassie the Messiah that finally came to liberate African people. of course, Rastafari developed around the Jamaican island, was developed by different leaders, but the main one, the one that is considered the first Rastafari, is Leonard Howell. Leonard Howell founded the first Rastafari community in Jamaica that lasts until from the 1930s to the 1950s, so lasts more or less 20 years. Sorry. And his community was a community, autosufficient community. He engaged in this community where he engaged different traditional Caribbean practices and traditions, like they were speaking and using Indian language, because we can forget that not only the African were enslaved by the Europeans, but even many Indians, they were deported from India to the Caribbean, and also many Chinese. I don't know more about that part of the world, but I know that, I mean, I found the presence of Chinese Indian in Jamaica quite high. The Pinnacle was still embedded of African traditional religions. In fact, they were using many words coming from the Kikongo language, that is a language belonging to Congo, or in their drumming and chanting, they were using the Kumina style that was, as we see before, part of the African traditional religions. Going to the Kumina was a Caribbean African tradition that developed in Jamaica during the slavery time, but was coming anyway from Ghana. Part of his part of the beliefs and practices, they were coming from Ghana. When the Howell community was destroyed, unfortunately, in the 1960s, Rastafari changed totally. We can see the advent of new houses, as they are called, like the Bobo Shanti, the Nyabingi, the 12 tribes. Despite they all believe in the divinity of King Selassie, they anyway have different practices, or even different internal beliefs, like, for example, the Bobo Shanti, the founder of Bobo Shanti, King Emmanuel, he believes, or the Bobo Shanti believe anyway, that he is part of the Trinity with King Selassie, Marcus Garvey, and Prince Emmanuel I. Or, for example, we can see in the 60s the development of the 12 tribes that, contrarily to all the other houses, they were open to white people. Contrarily, why? Because actually Rastafari, born as a black movement for repatriation of black people in Africa. So we see that in the 1960s as well, something different happened. People, Rastafari, started to adopt the Rasta symbols that we can see nowadays, that they are adopting, like the Ethiopian flag, like the dreadlocks, like the dread talk, the Lion of Judah. What is very interesting is the development of dread talk. The dread talk is a form of resistance against the language of the European hegemony in order to positivize words. So, for example, instead to say, I understand you, Rastafari say, I overstand you. Instead to say appreciate you, because appreciate go inside the word hate, they say I appreciate love you. So they try to make everything positive, even in the language. And the one that actually spread the language of Rastafari, the beliefs and practices around all the world, is Bob Marley. He became the prototype of the Rasta man globally, because with his music he spread the Rastafari beliefs and practices. One thing I forgot to tell you, actually, let's go back to the previous slide, is that generally Rastafari, they follow the biblical Nazareth code, but this is from the 1960s, because they know well Pinnacle, they were not following the biblical code specifically. Not all the houses of Rastafari follow the Nazareth code. Many, like the 12 tribes, for example, they follow the Levitical code that is a bit more less orthodox, let's say, of the Nazareth code, because the Nazareth code actually is founded on different law, like you cannot eat meat, you cannot brush your hair, you have to dress modestly. So it's a very hard orthodox practice. And many people, they think, when the people think about Rastafari, they always think about this Rasta man, very, happy in the Jamaican hills, smoking his spliff of marijuana, because smoking marijuana as well is a practice within Rastafari. Actually, this is a real wrong idea of what really Rastafari is, because Rastafari is a very serious and orthodox religion. It actually follow the Nazareth code. Is very hard, and I found it very hard to follow. I study in particular Rastafari, and I had to say that I've been surprised how the people really are in it, and they do everything to follow this Nazareth law. The Nazareth law as well is very important within Rastafari to make us understand the fact that the one that were following the Nazareth law in the Bible were actually the people of the high order of Melchizedek. So they were the high priest within Judaism. So to be a high priest in Judaism, instead be considered like, a very unthoughtful person just smoking marijuana on top of the hills. There is a very big difference. So going back to Bob Marley, he used in his songs the dread talk, believing the words, sound, the language has effect on people and mind. This is the main concept within Rastafari, that is word, sound, the power. Go back to the African concept of Ashe, for which the divinity is in everything, and even words as a divine power that can be transmitted to people. Today, Rastafari is embraced by many people around all the world, probably thanks Bob Marley music, but even thanks to the fact that many people immigrate from the Caribbean, from Jamaica to England or to America, and is embraced around all the world as well, because thanks, new with the with the internet, with the social network, people can communicate and can learn about any religion at any time. So many people are starting to learn and embrace this movement in different way, on internet or having contact with Jamaican people directly. And all the songs, all the content behind Bob Marley music was, as Rastafari is, a form of resistance toward the European hegemony, toward a down-pressing system that down-pressed these people for 400 years. So in conclusion, I hope that this presentation helped you to see Afro-Caribbean religion in a more positive way that has been narrated until today. And it's important that we understand Afro-Caribbean religion as the outcome, apart as a beautiful and creative set of religions, but even as the outcome of a form of resistance and accommodation to an inhuman contest, such as the contest of slavery and colonialism in the Caribbean islands. Actually, I would like to leave you wondering why we don't study Afro-Caribbean religions or Afro-traditional religions. I mean, in the university, we study New Age, Druidism, but there is no presence or much presence of Afro-Caribbean religion, culture, or African tradition and culture and religions. So I want to leave you with this wonder today.
Thank you very much for attending. Thank you very much, Hilde, for
Thank you very much.
presentation.
Thank you very much to you.